Hey guys, welcome back. Alright, so let's talk about taking this to the track. What's the plan? So of course we want to have fun, but I can't help it. If I'm at the track and I'm driving my car, it's going to be fun. So that's already a check mark. So one of our first things is we want to shake it down, right? This car has not been to the track in like 6 or 7 years or whatever. It's been a long time since it's actually gone down the track. I did street drive it a while, but in 2021 it came off the road and it's been, getting wrenched on for 3 years and some change. So we're basically going to shake it down. Some of the big points that we don't know about. Let's see. The first one that's in my mind is the transmission. Last time I was at the track, it had a flare on the 2-3 where when you go from second to third, instead of going into third, it basically went into neutral and then went into second. Or no, from second, it essentially went to neutral and then third. So instead of the tach like dropping RPMs, it would rev and then drop. Really bad. Hopefully that's fixed, but we got to get to the track to know for sure. I can't do a 2-3 shift anywhere else. It wouldn't be safe. So we'll find out at the track if that's fixed, but hopefully it is. How the chassis performs. So I think it's going to be okay. The car did pretty well last time at 400. This car actually went pretty straight. But we have taken a lot of stuff apart and put it back together, so we need to make sure that's good. Obviously, it's got a cage now, so in theory, I think it should be better going down the track than it used to be just from the cage. But that's to be confirmed. We have a different wheel and tire setup now. The ride height's different, the coilovers are different, the tires are different. So we just took a guess at the alignment. This is something that I don't know how to calculate exactly what it needed. So I just took like a guess, set that, and we're just going to run it. And then make changes and see if it gets better, worse, or stays the same. Just a scientific way of, how do you know what's best? Well, just test it and find out. So there's some of that. Let's see the motor. So some of the question marks there, probably the first one's going to be the fuel system because it's all new. The fuel tank, the fuel pump, the lines, the hoses, the injectors, all this stuff is new to me. Since we did a custom fuel pump setup, I have run the car up to red line in like first gear. So, I've made like 1 or 2 pulls on it and nothing catastrophic happened. But, until you've really gone down the track a few times, you don't know if there's like a underlying issue that's just going to show itself at, the first time it sees like a full load scenario. So we'll just have to find out. Hopefully it's good. We definitely did our homework from the engineering standpoint to try to design stuff to be functional and have a factor of safety, but we won't know until we get to the track. Another one would be the cooling system. I think it's going to be fine, but we don't have any track passes on this yet. We know it cools the engine, like as far as idling and driving around, but we'll just have to see how that does. We do have a small radiator, but it's got a good fan. I think it'll be fine, but we got to, that's something we'll be testing at the track, see how our cooling system performs. We also installed a transmission cooler. It's tucked up under there. Some of you guys might remember that. That's a liquid-to-liquid heat exchanger that we installed. So that uses engine coolant that circulates and cools the transmission fluid. They don't mix fluids, but it does remove heat from the trans and put it into the cooling system. We got a trans temp gauge so we can actually see our trans temp. So, I know it cools. If I turn it on, I can watch the trans temps go up and down. So we'll just have to see how it performs at the track. Another big question mark is the electrical system. So I engineered that, I put some real effort into that. We have a 16-volt system with 105 amp hours of capacity. So I expect that I can go to the track, race the car for, say, 3 or 4 hours, make a pass, pull over, check it out. Basically say like you make like 3 or 4 passes an hour. You go make a pass, you park it, go over the car for 5 minutes, make sure it looks good, get back in line, do it again. So maybe half the time it's running and half the time it's parked. I could probably do that for 3 or 4 hours and not charge the battery. Maybe even more than that, because it kind of depends, like, if you turn the headlights off and turn the running lights off, that really extends the battery life. I don't have an automatic fan yet, but that's another one. If you operate the fan as you need it instead of just leaving it on all the time, that'll definitely save power. If I ever get the auto fan set up, that'll be a big one. So there's some question marks on the battery. Something we're just going to have to run the car and see how it does. Oh, what else? Some of the more critical stuff I have more confidence in because I was real careful, like the seat, the steering column, stuff like that. Like I put a lot of effort to make sure that stuff was strong and safe. So it is stuff that, we got to evaluate, but I expect it's going to be okay. We did put we kind of like went above and beyond on some of that to make sure it would be sufficient. Nonetheless, those are things. The braking system. So I've done Miata braking systems in the past, but yeah, this whole braking system came apart and went back together. I mean, we had the hard lines were out of the car, the reservoir, the calipers. I mean, everything came apart. We rebuilt everything. So it seems fine, but, got to make some passes, try out those brakes, make sure everything holds up, no issues come up. Oh, what else? We don't have any leaks that we know of, so hopefully that's not an issue. We got our windshield. It may cave in because it's not braced, but it's not going to break because it's polycarbonate. So I'm not too worried about that, but it's something to be evaluated. So anyway, all right, let's kind of change gears. We talked about those type of things. So that's like the stuff for shaking the car down, just making like safety and function, right? So let's change gears and talk about performance as it relates to what we talked about, but also performance because that's what we care about. So when we first get to the track, we're just going to run wastegate pressure, which right now that's 16 pounds of boost. So if I had to guess, this motor, if you did not have a turbo, let's see, it's basically just an NA motor. Let's pretend you don't have a turbo, right? So it's got a header, it's got cams. This motor could probably make 170 at the wheels, just naturally aspirated, maybe 180, because it does have a lot of head work and a flat top intake. Doesn't have the compression, but it doesn't help you when you're NA, but anyway, what works on turbo and what works on NA are a little different. This motor with this compression could probably put down 170, maybe 180 naturally aspirated, especially on methanol, because we're on E85 now, and we may do a shakedown pass on E, but we are getting switched to methanol once we've basically established that it's not leaking, it's not broken, and not slipping and overheating and all that. When all that looks good, on wastegate, we are going to switch to methanol. So if this car was on methanol naturally aspirated, it'd probably put down like 190 at the wheels, something like that. At least like 185. So if you take, let's see if I can find a calculator. I'll actually do the math while we're talking. So 16 pounds of boost. I'll have to find a calculator real quick. But what is 16 divided by 14.7? That's going to be like 1.1 roughly. I don't have a calculator. I'll be right back. Okay, here we go. So 16 pounds of boost divided by 14.7 psi per atmosphere, 1.088. Multiply that by let's say we can make 190 at the wheels, NA on methanol. What did I do wrong? Oh, it's got to be times 2. Hold on. So 2.088 times 190. So 16 pounds of boost. That's almost 400 at the wheels. So if we're right, 16 pounds is actually going to be close to 400 at the wheels. So if that's true, I don't know if that's true. Look, I don't know. Maybe that's not true. But the last time I was at the track, I was running 30 pounds of boost, which was about 400 at the wheels. I don't know if the car's really that fast at 16. Maybe it isn't. But let's say it makes 350 at the wheels. It'll probably do that. As light as it is, it should be running as fast as it ran with 400 when it weighed 2,600 pounds. Which basically means this car should be running low 7s or high 6s, even on wastegate, which is only 16 pounds of boost. So that's actually quite fast. Actually makes me think maybe I should turn it down, but I can't turn it down without pulling the wastegate apart. So I'm probably just going to leave it at 16. Now, the very first pass, I will probably roll out a little smooth, like, basically don't launch at full boost, just bring it up like 5 or 10 pounds, roll out, and then, let it build boost and go down the track. And I may even get out of it and coast, especially if anything feels wrong. But once we get that first pass, if everything seems okay, the next pass, I want to get that 2-3 gear change to find out if the transmission's fixed. And we do want to do that at low boost. So say only 16 instead of 30. If it turns out that's good, then that'll be nice. We'll get the car switched over to methanol. That will take some tuning, because I've never tuned on methanol. And of course, we obviously got to plug into the computer and make some changes to our fuel stuff to get it to even run on meth, because the stoichiometric air-fuel ratio stuff is totally different. But yeah, once we get running on methanol, we'll do some tuning. Like I said, definitely wastegate pressure, and make sure everything is safe. And if it feels good, we're going to start turning it up. So I'm calculated that I can probably go to 35 psi with this turbo with pretty decent efficiency. Now you'll see guys push turbos really hard. I've always been that guy. And I may end up doing it again, but I'm going to try to be smart about it. This turbo, you could push it to probably 40, possibly even higher. But if you go by the maps, 35 to 37 is probably as far as you want to push it. Essentially, once you go past about 35, your turbine inlet pressure is going to be climbing at a really high rate. Below about 35 psi, this is one of the reasons I did all this work. This setup, on paper, the boost pressure should be higher than the back pressure. Now, a lot of you guys probably know what I'm talking about, but in case you don't, on a turbocharged engine, especially when you got a turbo that spools quickly, like my pickup truck has little baby turbos that spool right off idle. But that motor, if you're running 12 pounds of boost, up at high RPMs, the exhaust could be at 30 or 40 psi. Even though the engine's only running like 12 or 15, the back pressure is ridiculous. Now, that works, but they have to run cams that are like super conservative. And then the piston has to push that super high pressure exhaust out, shut the exhaust valves, then open the intake valves. If you did it any other way, when the intake valve opens, that high pressure exhaust would just blow right in your intake manifold. So overlap, when your setup is correct, overlap is great for making more power, but you got to have low exhaust pressure for that to work. That's why people have a distinction between like forced induction cams and NA cams. But there's also a thing where if your setup and your motor work well, really good, you can basically run NA cams and turbo motors and make crazy power. But you got to have your exhaust pressure low enough. This setup, up to about 35 psi, I believe the exhaust back pressure will be lower than the boost pressure. So that should give me good detonation resistance, even though I'm on meth, but I should still have it, and it should make a lot of power. So the reason we're talking about this, when I'm at the track, I'm going to be going, say we run 16 pounds and we make a couple pulls, we see what our mile an hour is. Mile an hour at the drag strip is pretty consistent. No matter what you do, your mile an hour is usually pretty consistent. Your ET can go up and down depending on your launch, depending on traction, but for the same power, they're going to run similar mile an hour. So what I want to do is run, say, 16 pounds, turn it up a little, make another pass, turn it up a little, make another pass. I'll be tuning it as I go, and I'll be seeing how the car is responding. So like, say I keep going up by 2 psi, just as an example, eventually 2 psi isn't going to make as big a difference as it did before, and that's, as that starts to happen, you know that you're approaching the end of something, either your turbo, your motor, your cams, the interaction between two or more of those things. Something is holding it back. And we're going to be looking for that. Because like I said, we care about efficiency and reliability. And that's something I could kind of unpack. You see this all the time on like YouTube. People will just start turning up the boost, trying to get, they'll try to hit a number, right? Like, oh, we got to hit 400, we got to hit 500. And they'll be adding timing and leaning it out and turning up the boost. And, they'll see like, oh, we only picked up like 12 horsepower, and they'll be just pushing it to the limit. I'm not going to do that. I say that. I'm going to do my damnedest not to do that, because I want this to be reliable, and that is exactly how you blow shit up, is trying to push 100% out of any, it's almost anything. You run it at 100%, it's not going to last. So that's my goal, is to keep this turbo, pretty high. It is a race car, but we're not going to push it past the edge. We're not going to choke flow. We're not doing that. And everything on the setup is designed to keep it happy. We got big oil lines, we got cool oil, we got water cooling. It should live a happy life. So anyway, that's going to be our goal. We're just going to get there, do some shakedown runs, and then slowly turn it up, and we're going to be monitoring how the car is responding. What we're hoping is that we'll eventually get up to, say, 35 pounds. Hopefully we'll be running high fives in the eighth. That's our goal. My goal is to run 580s. Now, is the car really going to do that? Well, only one way to find out. But I think it's gonna get close, or it's gonna break. Now, I don't think anything behind the motor is going to break, but we might like blow a head gasket or something. Maybe that. Or I don't think it's going to break a main cap either. I actually talked to a buddy of mine about this. He brought it up, and I kind of agree, but, you know, this engine, the way the transmission and stuff works, like I don't have a manual, so I don't see super high torque at like the mid-range, because it'll just go through the converter and the motor will rev. So basically it's like torque limited everywhere except high RPM. Well, that's actually really good for your bottom end. As much as people talk about wanting to have all this mid-range, well, if you want reliability, it's, you know, it's better to have that power up top than in the middle. That torque is what breaks a lot of stuff. So we've got that in our favor. We also have an automatic with a converter, and that'll absorb all kinds of vibration because of the fluid dampening effects. And I got a feeling that between those two things, that I think the main caps may be okay. So let's hope they hold in there. If they do, I really think this car is going to get up to like probably 650 at the wheels when we get up to 35 pounds of boost. And if it does, if it really makes 650 to the tires and it weighs 1,900 pounds, it should run 580s. So that's kind of what we're thinking. I guess maybe, you know, in a few weeks or a few months or whatever, we can go back to this video and we'll see how I did. But that's what I'm thinking is going to happen, is 16 pounds of boost. We're probably going to be in the low 7s, maybe even the high 6s, which would be amazing because that's half the boost I was running before to run those times. So let's see if that plays out. And then we'll be in the 5s when we get it turned up all the way. So let's hope that happens too. Anyway, I guess that's going to wrap this one up. We're going to, at this point, I think the only thing left to do is to just basically put it on a trailer. I guess I got to look and make sure I got a way to strap it down. I did kind of cut a lot of the car off to save weight. So hopefully there's still something left that I can wrap around and maybe control arms or something and just physically tie this thing to the trailer so it doesn't fall off on the way there. But yeah, that's about it. Get this thing on the trailer, get it strapped down. And the last thing, we're waiting on weather. So you know the thing, April showers, May flowers? Well, our April showers were kind of delayed, and now we're in early May, and it's been raining every single day. So to get to the track, it's got to stop raining, and it's got to stop raining long enough for the track to dry out. Because where I go, they can take like these, you know, all this equipment and physically force the track to be like heated up and dry it. But if the ground's wet, the water will just come up through the ground back onto the track. So it's got to actually be dry for like 2 or 3 days before they can truly get the track dry, and it'll stay dry. So with any luck, in a week or two, this thing will be at a drag strip. But at this point, we're fine. For once, we're actually going to be waiting on the weather and not waiting on me. So anyway, that kind of wraps this one up. That gives you guys some expectations of what we're going to be doing when we get to the track. I'll just be filming with my phone, so I'll do my best to capture some stuff to get you guys some videos. I'm going to order a mount for the windshield so that I can put my phone up there and get some going down the track footage for y'all. And we'll have data logs and stuff to go over as well, so we'll check all that out. And time slips, and I think I have a draggy. I'll try to find that and get that going too. Buddy of mine gave me a draggy. Shout out to Tim. So we're going to see if we can find it and definitely bring that with us. That'll give us some good data to look at to go with the time slips. But anyway, nice to have. So yeah, that's our plan. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this, and until next time, y'all take it easy.